And it is part of my faith that all people are holy and all people are sacred, unconditionally. And that is what makes faith sometimes, that's what prompts us to transform, because it is unconditional. It's not about that it is up to us to love parts of people. We love all people. There is nothing holy about rejecting medical care of people, no matter who they are on the grounds of what their identity is. There is nothing holy about turning someone away from a hospital. There's nothing holy about rejecting a child from a family. There's nothing holy about writing discrimination into the law. And I am tired of communities of faith being weaponized and being mischaracterized, because the only time religious freedom is invoked is in the name of bigotry and discrimination.
People who say, oh, but you're harming a life. I believe this is life. Well, some religions don't. So how about that? Our Jewish brothers and sisters, they are able to have an abortion according to their faith. You know, there are so many faiths that do not have the same definition of life as fundamentalist Christians. And so what about their rights? What about their right to exercise their faith? It's ridiculous. And it is theocratic. It's authoritarian. It is wrong.
And I think it's really important that it's addressed very directly right now and in this moment. First and foremost, I don't want to hear a single person on this committee or outside of this committee talk about valuing life when they continue to uphold the death penalty, when they continue to support policies that disproportionately incarcerate and lead to the deaths of Black men and people throughout this country, and uphold an absolutely unjust medical system that exists for profit that allows people to die because they can't afford to live. In addition to that, if we want to talk about Planned Parenthood, let's talk about how many lives Planned Parenthood has saved and how many babies have been born because of the prenatal care provided by Planned Parenthood. And if you don't believe it, and if you've never met a Planned Parenthood baby, I'm happy to let you know that I am one, and that my mother received and relied on prenatal care from Planned Parenthood when she was pregnant with me. And so if we're concerned about life, we don't get to talk about anyone else who's not concerned about the full spectrum of that when we are upholding policies that kill people. I think it's important to state that that abortion is an economic issue. Forcing poor and working class people to give birth against their will, against their consent, against their ability to provide for themselves or a child is a profound economic issue, and it's certainly a way to keep a workforce basically conscripted to large-scale employers and to employers to work more against their will, to take second and third jobs against their desire and their own autonomy. And so the idea that that abortion and access to abortion is somehow not a profound and central economic and class issue and class struggle is certainly something that I think a person who's never had to contend with the ability to carry a child, it belies that perspective. I, for example, since Republicans are forcing this conversation in uncomfortable ways, then I will meet them to it. I have an IUD. I've had one for years. Now, IUDs, if an IUD fails and results in an ectopic pregnancy, which has about a 50% chance, I believe, of an ectopic pregnancy emerging with an IUD, would that mean that if I were hospitalized in these states, you would have to wait until I was in the process, potentially, of actively dying before you could effectively treat me and save my or anyone in our position's life?
So thank you for that question. I think this came up earlier around ectopic pregnancies. To date, and to my knowledge, there are no laws that outlaw care for ectopic pregnancies.
Well, I find Governor Abbott's comments disgusting, and I think there's twofold. One, I don't know if he is familiar with a menstruating person's body. In fact, I do know that he's not familiar with a woman, with a female or menstruating person's body, because if he did, he would know that you don't have 6 weeks. Is that quote unquote 6 weeks? And I'm sorry we have to break it down on, break down biology 101 on national television. But in case no one has informed him before in his life, 6 weeks pregnant means 2 weeks late for your period. And 2 weeks late on your period for any person with a menstrual cycle can happen if you're stressed, if your diet changes, or for really no reason at all. So you don't have 6 weeks.
Also, if you live in a blue area, when people say go vote, that should include primary elections too. Because the thing that a lot of people don't like to talk about is the fact that not every Democrat is pro-choice, okay? So the ones that aren't, we really need to reassess if it's appropriate for them to continue to serve in 2022. I have to tell my colleagues and other folks, if you're fundraising, if you're using this moment to fundraise for yourself and your seat is not in danger and this isn't real, and like those funds aren't being directly used, like it's not helpful. It's not helpful. And a lot of those funds should be used right now to go to abortion funds or to go to real frontline members whose seats really mean the difference between, and really make the difference between staving off just a fascist calamity.
And that's really what the Hyde Amendment is about. The Hyde Amendment isn't about abortion per se. The Hyde Amendment is truly about equality of healthcare and healthcare access for low-income women and women of color and women that get caught in our mass incarceration system. And so the Hyde Amendment is about income inequality, and it's about women's healthcare in a system of income inequality. So I think that we need to repeal it.
I will say on a policy response, we need to be working on repealing the Hyde Amendment in Congress right now. I am proud to say that we have successfully started to take the steps to repeal the Hyde Amendment. And with the Hyde Amendment, repealing the Hyde Amendment will allow the federal government to invest in access to reproductive care in any place that has federal jurisdiction, including places with federal jurisdiction in red states. I have brought up, for example, the prospects of increasing abortion access on federal lands in red states. There are workarounds around this. We can start exploring this now. We can start working on what the scaffolding and the details of this would look like now. And the actual deep investment would be allowed if we repealed the Hyde Amendment. I believe that the president should come out in favor, forcefully in favor of expanding the Supreme Court. I believe that the president should forcefully come out in favor of abolishing the Senate filibuster. Those two actions dramatically increase political pressure and makes it much harder to resist. I personally believe that Clarence Thomas should be impeached beyond a shadow of a doubt. I am astonished that this is a position that is in any way controversial to anyone. The degree and extent of misconduct that Clarence Thomas alone, in addition to several of his colleagues, have participated and engaged in, is foundationally delegitimizing to the Supreme Court. And it is our responsibility, our constitutional duty, to rein them in.
We have many ideas. We have some ideas coming from Senator Warren, signed a letter along with 25 other Democratic senators asking President Biden to explore opening healthcare clinics on federal lands in red states in order to help people access the healthcare and abortion services that they need.
Supreme Court illegitimate! Supreme Court illegitimate! Supreme Court illegitimate! Actually fucking do something! Actually fucking do something about this shit! Don't fucking care! Get out there! Fucking fight! I don't want to hear that! Illegitimate! This decision! 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 Illegitimate! Into the streets! Into the streets! Into the streets! Illegitimate! This decision! Illegitimate! This decision! Illegitimate! Into the streets! 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 Keep abortion safe and legal! 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 Keep abortion safe and legal!
A lot of these institutions were built on a very creaky foundation. And so what that means is that when we build it back, we need to build it back stronger than what it was before.
What can you do in Congress?
I mean, that's the thing. Build the streets. We have to build the streets. Right now, elections are not enough. You know, I'm not gonna be here and tell you to drop out because we need to show up everywhere. We need sand in every damn gear. We need sand in every damn gear. But elections alone are not gonna save us. We need to show up, yeah, at the ballot box, but that's the bare minimum. Because frankly, we just elected the first pro-choice majority Democratic Party 3 years ago to understand where we're at. We need to do what they do.